So, three lovely ladies from Stony Brook, New York. Nancy Watt, Carolyn Sealfon, and Erica Marx. You did a workshop today at the conference called Talk Data to Me. And, well, I'm, like most improvisers, not too keen on gathering data. So please tell me, what was the session about and why should we care about data?
We want to be able to do what we do even better and bring it to more people and be able to see whether we're all about alignment, right? So how can we align our sessions and what we do with what we want, with the way we want to impact and change the world.
Okay. And yeah, Nancy?
Well, I think that applied improv facilitation is at a real tipping point. And for us to raise the bar and get better and validate the work that we do, we have to employ data science into that, to qualify it, to quantify it, and to give us that credibility that we deserve. Enough of the anecdotal evidence. Let's bring a little bit of something more evidence-based and more scientifically valid to share this information. I was speaking with someone after the workshop, and we were talking about the fact that applied improv is not so much the treasure as it is the treasure map to discover what people want. And so data gives us good mapping points in order to find that.
Nicely said. Anything to add, Erica?
She's still going. She's still going.
Yeah.
My turn?
Yes.
So for me, the part especially that I focused on is data as simply a translation for what's happening in the room and ways to integrate collecting data into your sessions. So how to take an activity how to take an activity that's interactive and how to take data out of that. So then you can present that back to the people in the room and lead to more rich debriefs, especially in the context of, well, I work in leadership coaching and change over time.
Yes.
So one of the really great things that, as we know with applied improv, you often reveal people to themselves, you reveal patterns that were unseen, you reveal dynamics that people didn't realize or assumptions that were blind to people. And so I like to use the integration of collecting data to do the same thing. So especially, for example, if there's a team and they can't say something, but maybe they can put a dot on a piece of paper, or maybe they can put a sticker on a wall, or they can do an activity that makes them end up at a certain place in the room. And then we can put that data together and show the pattern back to the team.
Yeah,
and you
so
can ask really interesting questions.
Yeah, what I like what you say is that the gathering of the data is not something like the usual Excel sheet number thing, but it could be a dot, or it could be a drawing, it could be words, it could be anything actually what you collect from your participants.
Yeah, so we came up with we did a lot of showing different ways. So you can use survey questions before and after, and Carolyn spoke a lot about how to make those survey questions even more specific, even more relevant to behavior change. You're really measuring what you want to be measuring. And then, yes, there was a piece that's about how do you do something that's a great foundation of interactive activity that you can do in the room and people can have meaning because they're changing their bodies about how they want to be and where they want to be in association with each other, and at the same time you're capturing that information so that you can look at it as a snapshot and ask interesting questions about it.
So how did the session go? Like, what was the general vibe in the room, or the biggest questions?
It was originally.
It was busy. We ran out of our handouts. Right?
Yeah, and we didn't run out of time. We knew
It was tight. It was supposed to be a 90-minute session. It was scaled back to an hour, so we needed to keep it really tight. And
so, what data can you give me on the session? What data can you give me on the session? Like, how many people?
We still need to analyze that. Don't get us started.
it out to our participants in addition
Yeah,
to
it
the
is
slides
true.
and
It is true
research.
for the conference in terms of the feedback.
Yes.
Yeah, my memory was that most people. So we did quadrants, which were yeah. Can you see that?
Yes. Good.
So we asked people this question towards
Yes.
the end
Mm-hmm.
of how important is collecting data? How important do you believe it is in your work? And then what's your level of confidence in your ability to collect meaningful data? And then everyone answered that question by putting a dot in the appropriate part of this piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
And then they
And my
swapped
memory,
cards.
yeah.
They swapped cards with each other so that you wouldn't know who you were representing.
Yes.
And then they mapped themselves in the room physically, as if this was on the floor. And then if we had a whole session, then you would ask those interesting questions.
Good.
If you're standing for somebody else, what might make them answer here? All those questions. But in our case, we just had them pass the cards back, so then we can swap the data
Yes.
and give it back.
Well, we did have them stand, and my memory is that most people thought it was high importance, and it was fairly evenly split between low confidence and high confidence. But there were people with over in the low importance, high confidence. There were a couple of people.
But high confidence, what does it mean? That you are feeling confident yourself with gathering data?
To use data to assess
Okay.
the effectiveness of your workshop or session or whatever.
Yes.
And I believe that the participants got value in that. The way that we structured the workshop, we wanted to make it about the workshop that they were developing, either
Yes.
currently delivering or want to develop. And we talked about their goals. We talked about the important discussion and the questions to be asked of the client in order to identify their goals and where those gaps are and how to measure those gaps. How will you want a happier workforce? Well, what the hell does that mean, right?
Yes.
What will those metrics be? Carolyn gave a great example of, I want physics students to have meaning, to understand.
To make meaning of physics and mathematics. I mean, I was giving a physics example, but
Yeah.
we had other examples. We had one participant who was who we did some brainstorming with. So trying to develop teens' confidence, and so and it's very challenging to take like a big vague goal and really make it narrow and specific. And so we were just brainstorming things like maybe the ability to have a more confident posture, right? To present themselves with more confidence would be a specific
Okay. Yes,
outcome.
and they can measure themselves in the beginning and at the end.
And that could be also something that could be practiced in a workshop. Right?
Yeah. Or maybe other people can even rate your posture.
Right.
Yes. Okay, so Carolyn, I do have a question for you. You said the surveys. I think almost all of us as facilitators, we do take surveys, and we kind of sit with the client maybe to come up with some questions. But what is the one question we definitely always should ask?
When? At what point?
I think it depends. To me, I don't think there ever is a question you always should ask. I think it depends on your goal.
Usually a question I would always ask is something about how would you apply this? What would this look like in application? And then ideally connect, and then I have more questions. But
Yes.
the question I usually would always ask is something about that. I'm asking them to do the application and the integration in service of advancing whatever that goal is.
And then how do you deal with privacy? Because everybody has their own personal learning goals and personal experiences of the learning in the workshops. And then you have your paying client. So how do you get back to your client referring the results of your data? Because sometimes they are, for instance, the question you just asked, like how do you apply this? Actually, people can come up with very personal, open answers to that question. So how do you get back to your client with those qualitative results?
Oh, I see. That was the question I would always ask, but not necessarily data I would collect. So the question was, what
Yeah, I mean, but the question is, will they actually apply it? And, the ideal way would be to actually be able to observe whether the behaviors or whatever is going on later, or maybe give a questionnaire later, how often have you done this or that? Again, it depends on what the goals are.
Right. No, it's not so much whether they will apply, but for me, my question is more about what kind of data are you revealing to your paying customer, like the boss of the people you train, usually. So how is it with the privacy of the answers in your survey? Is it anonymous, or how do you do that?
Yes. So I think that was not a question that we had time to adequately address in our very super fast workshop, and that's a very important question. And it did come up more so afterwards. So we want to be very, very careful when we're collecting data to use our compassion as AINers and be very careful about the ethical use of that data, and consider the consequences of how we use that data for our participant. So if it
what
is
would be your advice?
Anonymity is key.
And to understand the bias that goes into asking survey questions that are either poorly written or too leading, etc. To understand the how, as practitioners, we often fall victim to confirmation bias or acquiesce bias or central tendency bias. And we had one participant want the follow-up Zoom call for how to build a better survey. And I think that will be very useful to our community. We had talked about that in preparation for this, knew we wouldn't have time to adequately get into the, the dynamics and the understanding of survey questions, but stay tuned, because I think it would be value added for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
I think, Anne-Marie, to answer your question, things I do to give, when anyone is answering a question in the room, while I'm collecting data, they know that this is data they're going to see. Right? So they filled out these cards, and I said, please answer these for yourself, and you won't have to reveal who you are. And then I will give back to you, like the whole leadership team, the results of what happens. So I would say almost always I don't know if it's always, but often I use surveys where people make up a fake name. So then even if I'm doing a paired before after, they make up a fake name at the beginning, and then at the end, they give them a drop-down menu of all the fake names. So they know that they can answer and that they're in.
So it's kind of anonymous in that sense.
Yeah, but then, and as much as possible, I like to design things so that the people who participated in sharing the information also see the results.
Okay, good. Well, one final question, because
how the data will be used.
Exactly. And to make the observation as facilitators that if there is true, if there is a dilemma or people have real challenges, either as a paying client or the people you're training, if there is huge anonymity concerns, that is indicative of deeper problems, right?
Yes.
So let's start that conversation.
Good.
I have had times where I've
Sorry, ladies, I'm looking at the time. I'm looking at the time. You have your 10-minute interview is now already 13:50. I think one of the main challenges, the three of you together have so much wisdom to share that you don't need just 15 minutes, you need 1 hour or 3 days. So that could be something challenging for you three. But I had the pleasure of looking at three happy faces, and I wish you all the best for the next coming days. And I will share your interview with the network. So hopefully lots of us are enthusiastic about making great surveys and collecting data in the future.
Wonderful. Best to you, and
thanks. Ciao.